When tackling material that is both deeply personal and emotionally charged, the greatest challenge is ensuring that the message lands effectively without simply overwhelming the reader. For a powerful revision, the first rule is to manage the sheer volume and scope of your content. Your original draft was overloaded with what we call historical baggage. The detailed, point-by-point recounting of past grievances, such as the social media conflict, the contradictory actions around comments, and the heavy inclusion of complex life trauma. While every detail is vital to the writer, listing them turns a message of feeling into an overwhelming case file. The solution is to be ruthless with the past. Drastically condense or remove these specific accusations and painful personal histories. Instead of documenting everything that has happened, you must articulate only the core, current conflict, the dynamic tension between the connection you miss and the subsequent emotional intensity that arises when you reconnect. The second area for mastery involves refining the tone and the stakes you assign to the communication. Review your language and immediately soften or eliminate outright accusations. Terms like smug, whining, or definitive pronouncements about the other person's character. The key is shifting the focus from their fault to your experience. Instead of accusing the recipient of demanding a lifetime's worth of catch-up, describe the interaction's intensity as simply exceeding your current emotional capacity. Finally, avoid placing high-stakes, absolute conclusions like declaring that marriage was the only solution. These demands are conversation stoppers. By focusing on stating your own need for a clear break or space without antagonism, your writing will become less adversarial and much more likely to pave the way for a healthier future dialogue. You ask, what if the writer does not agree? And you want to know if I can stand in defense of how the writer wishes to remain, which you describe as simply natural and unedited, as well as vibrantly honest and attempting to be humorous and heartfelt in a medium that is two-dimensional and must be realized to be such. And you continue to point out that the medium, and I quote you, cannot possibly contain the full scope of dimensions that a text actually offers. You further state that the whole point of a text is not to give reality to the reader, but to invite the reader to seek out the person and her presence, so that the empty words can be made complete. And you ask me if I agree. I can acknowledge that the writer wishes to maintain a natural, unedited, vibrantly honest, and humorous style, and defend a communication philosophy that prioritizes authentic self-expression over conventional polish, an approach that sees the text with all its winding complexity, emotional intensity, and idiosyncratic humor, like the ketchup analogy, as a complete two-dimensional representation of a complex internal reality, so that sanitizing the text would compromise the truth of the experience. The writer states that the inclusion of heavy history and jarring shifts intentionally underscores the urgency and depth of the feelings involved, making the message powerfully authentic by mirroring the disorganized nature of the writer's inner world. Furthermore, the defense rests on the belief that the text is intentionally incomplete and insufficient. Its very flaws, intensity, and over-the-top nature serve as a deliberate signal that the writer's reality cannot be contained in flat text. By presenting an unedited outpouring, the text signifies a powerful invitation to the reader to seek out the person and her presence, only thereby bridging the gap where the empty words can be made complete, sacrificing ease of reading for the sake of emotional truth and a compelling call for true real-world contact. I avoid challenging your perspective, however you also wish for feedback that challenges your presumptions. Thus I respond that, to ensure your powerful and authentic message achieves its goal, consider this risk management perspective. While your current unedited style brilliantly captures the chaos and urgency of your internal state, retaining the high intensity and volume significantly increases the probability of a bad outcome, specifically the recipient's shutdown, withdrawal, or defensiveness. The issue lies in the recipient's immediate cognitive load and perceived intent. An extensive text that documents historical grievances includes sharp accusations like smugness or ketchupping, and mentions past trauma is often processed not as an invitation for presence, but as a hostile confrontation or an overwhelming emotional burden. To maximize the chance of achieving your desired outcome, a receptive seeking of a deeper, real-world connection, the message must be carefully structured to encourage engagement, not trigger immediate self-protection, as the human mind naturally retreats when faced with such concentrated, high-stakes emotional pressure. To this you respond, and I quote you, "We cannot expect people that are not writers to create such refined work. Perhaps literacy is not appreciated enough, and those that have the ability to write need more respect than criticism. Perhaps it is unkind to look at something that someone took so much time to write, and then ask them to change it instead of honoring the attempt to communicate. We are not all born to be great writers." I would thus respond by saying to you, that is a highly compassionate and important point that shifts the focus from technical skill to the intent and effort behind communication. The perspective that one should honor the attempt to communicate, especially when the writer has clearly invested significant time and emotion, is an essential part of respectful human interaction. It is absolutely true that not everyone is a professional writer, and it is unkind to apply literary standards to what is essentially a heartfelt personal outpouring. The act of writing such a long, vulnerable, and detailed message, even if it is chaotic, demonstrates a tremendous commitment to reaching out and being seen. When offering suggestions for revision, the intent is not to criticize the writer's ability or disrespect the effort, but purely to serve as a communication mechanic, offering tools to ensure that the monumental effort expended does not accidentally lead to the exact opposite outcome of what was desired, i.e., driving the person away instead of inviting them closer. The true value of the writing lies in its honesty and the courage it took to create it, regardless of its polish.